Today at Solus Partners, we're proud to present Tom with Intelligent Core. They have a very unique and innovative solution when it comes to the upstream oil and gas market. Tom, can you tell us a little bit about the platform?
Yeah. Hi, Stephen. It's great to be here with you. Yeah. I mean, Intelligent Core, ultimately, we're an operational intelligence platform that unifies data, predictions, and autonomous execution in one adaptive intelligence layer. Our kind of tagline, if you so to speak, is we can deploy anywhere and we run on intelligence. So we've built it for not your kind of front office or back office analytics, but we've built our engines and our solutions for, live real world operations that can run across edge field systems and cloud to deliver that real-time decision that these operators need. And our strategy is really to become the standard intelligence layer across these critical operations. And we're starting very much in oil and gas, addressing some of the key problems there. But we have ambitions beyond oil and gas, but it's very much where our bread is being buttered at the moment.
Well, when you're reaching out to groups, what is the general pitch? Obviously, there's some elements of operations that come into your oversight. What does that typically look like?
I mean, ultimately, I think there's a common denominator across all of this, which is a siloed and fragmented data ecosystem that a lot of these operators and companies are having to manage at the moment. And a lot of the time that is the blocker to real digital transformation within these businesses. And these industries, as I said, they rely on siloed systems. They still rely on this. The kind of fragmentation as this data means manual workflows are still very prevalent. All of the processes generally around some of the operational challenges that these guys face are very reactive. And these kind of challenges mean that they don't have that real-time view. They don't have visibility on any sort of anomaly that can help, or rather that contribute to increased downtime and risk. And the kind of scattering of this data across SCADA, senses, different apps, contractors, and even paper to a lot of times, with no kind of standardized structure or unified operational picture across sites or teams mean it's really challenging for these guys to have real-time visibility to help them make more proactive decisions and move into kind of more proactive operational mindset or framework. But it also contributes to what are increasing challenges around compliance and ESG pressure. Regulators expect verified, time-stamped, structured data in near real time. So all of this kind of plays into this kind of vicious circle of reactive operations that is only getting bigger, and these costs are only increasing. So that's generally what we do for our customers, and how our solutions can be deployed, as I said, very flexibly. And so those are the problems we're helping to address.
Well, with your real-time insights and shifting kind of the management from a reactive to more of a proactive approach, what does that mean for like a CFO of an oil and gas operation?
Well, I mean, ultimately, it means that they will have the kind of real-time insights to make those operational decisions that are currently very reactive. Like the problem's already happened, right? Now it's about remediating that problem and fixing that problem rather than preventing it. So what it means is that they will have a lot greater visibility control over ultimately how those kind of budgets are being allocated, where the kind of big costs are being incurred across the operational ecosystem. But on the flip side, once, what we're seeing with our kind of current customers is once they've deployed the solution, and generally how we're working is a kind of software first approach. We provide both software and hardware solutions, and we're one of the only companies in the world who do that. And we've built specifically designed hardware that is designed for AI integration. So we generally start with software. And what we're seeing with customers is once that's deployed, they're already getting not just that real-time visibility. And I should add at this point that our kind of operational layer is fully adaptive, right? So field engineers will be interacting with the same platform that, head office, corporate, and the kind of finance team will be interacting with. It's just that view will be different. So for the field engineers, they're going to see the real-time operations, where they need to be focusing their resource, their manpower, and what they need to be prioritizing in terms of critical issues. For the finance guys in head office, they're being able to see, okay, how much are we saving on a monthly basis based on not having this previously, and being able to make much more strategic investments off of that saving into growth and innovation opportunities, which will help them to retain and ultimately develop their competitive edge.
I mean, that's highly dynamic, both in terms of in the field and then in the office management layer as well. So appreciate the detail there. Could you talk a little bit about kind of the story and the journey of acquiring your initial customers and what that's been like?
Yeah, I mean, you mean from a kind of pipeline perspective and engagement of the customers, you mean?
Yeah, just in terms of like how you guys were initially able to introduce the concept within an industry that typically doesn't move very fast
Mm.
within software.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think we've learned a lot over the last few months. And we're still a young company, as you know, Steve, and we kind of really kicked things off in January this year. So we've really only been running for 12 months, and we've learned a huge amount. And I think we've benefited from two things. One is a very clear kind of product market solution, right? Which is, we know what the problems are. We've identified what the problems are, and we've built specific solutions that are designed to address those problems directly. So that's one thing. We're not reliant on large LLM models that require vast amounts of data that take a long time to generate ROI and are very costly. And also, what accompanies LLMs is generally a significant change management that's required in terms of having the internal skill set on the customer side to be able to extrapolate the value out of these large models. What we do and what we've been able to that's really helped gain traction, as I said, really be very specific about the problems that we're solving and put it in kind of plain English, right? So we don't talk about technology just for technology's sake. We talk about the kind of operational challenges that these guys are facing, and then highlighting how our kind of very modular products can be deployed flexibly without incurring any sort of downtime or any sort of significant change management, at least at kind of the initial stage, to address these problems. So that kind of narrative and that explanation makes it instantaneously more tangible to the customers who we're speaking to. The other thing is and where I think, again, we kind of differentiate ourselves from other solutions like ours in the market, is our deep domain knowledge. Okay, so our co-founders, Adam Gillis and Robert Govin, both have extensive expertise in oil and gas. Adam, for example, he ran the green investment funds at Swire. He worked with a number of, he worked with Pioneer. He's worked with a number of different oil and gas operators in the Permian Basin over the last 20 years. So he has a real in-depth knowledge on what these kind of operational challenges are. And when you combine that with the knowledge of our CTO, David, who again has worked for 20 years in AI and deployment within oil and gas across companies like Shell, BP, Exxon, and Chevron from around the world, he really understands what it means in terms of the operational realities of deploying AI, not just deploying AI at a pilot level, but then the scaling of that, right? And so, as I said, we have a kind of very clear problem solution framework that makes it easy for customers to understand and relate to, because it becomes instantaneously more tangible when you talk about their problems. Then you accompany that with the fact that we have that deep domain knowledge. We've been able to build and scope these solutions in the ways that the operators really want to engage with and that they deploy with. And then, through that, we've built this kind of interface and this dashboard that works. And we've had this verified with our partners at Exxon, this is exactly what the engineers need, right? They need it in their hands. They need this real-time operational data that can help them make these real-time decisions. And then on the flip side, as I mentioned in your answer to your last question, the corporate team and the finance guys need to understand at the kind of finance and commercial level, what are the levers that are driving the most savings and the most operational gains here, and how much is this freeing up to then invest in kind of more strategic growth initiatives. So it's that combination of clarity and knowledge that is really helping us gain traction within our audience and our customers.
Well, I think your modular design and then the ability just to uniquely speak to key stakeholders across the operation itself is very unique, especially in the world of AI, specifically vertical AI within oil and gas. It's something we at Solis Partners have not seen. Could you talk a little bit about kind of the lessons you've learned over this last year within that growth journey?
I can. A lot of lessons to be learned. I think the first thing that I've learned is that sales, when it comes to software, sales cycles are always longer than you expect them to be. So we've learned to really understand, how do we gain traction from that initial meeting towards conversion and actually moving from just pilot to long-term recurring revenue contracts. And so, you know, being a startup and being a young business with a small team, you have to be able to learn quickly. And that's not necessarily about failing. It's more about pivoting and adjusting and evolving and understanding, what resonates with customers, what resonates with different types of stakeholders, and being able to articulate that in a language in a way that really resonates with them. So I'll give you an example. When we kind of first started out, we very much approached it in the way that many other companies in this space do, which is, hey, look, we can solve all your problems, right? And these are the big problems that we can address, right? And then, but what you soon realize is that actually within the kind of sector, that narrative needs more flesh on the bones when you talk to the different kind of types of operators that really work within the space. So how do you kind of curate that narrative for service providers, for example, where it becomes much more about resource management, logistics, and kind of route optimization, as opposed to kind of more infrastructure based? And then you look at kind of your midstream and your upstream, where it instantaneously moves into more kind of predictive maintenance infrastructure at a much broader scale. So it's about being able to really listen to our customers, not just hear them and not just sit in a room nodding, but really listen to what they're saying and try and take the learnings out of what they're saying and apply that to how we can then adapt it moving forward. So we've really learned not just what they need when they need it, but how to frame it in a language that they understand and that they can resonate with. So I think that's been a really significant learning for us, and something that has really helped sharpen our focus and sharpen our narrative. I think that the second big thing is, don't underestimate how important it is to have a team that can really take and listen to what the customer is saying and translate that into technical solutions. And I think that's one of the big areas where I think, a lot of these companies struggle with. And it was something that I think we've been really fortunate enough in our kind of founding team. And we have a capability to really, as I said, listen to the customer and not just play back what they need, but translate that into and kind of absorb that information into our product roadmap, so that we can embed all of that knowledge into how we are developing our products and driving innovation within the business to keep pace with what our customers need and when they need it. So I think those two are the kind of big areas, and it all goes back to being able to really understand what our customers are saying and what they mean when they're asking questions about what our solutions can do for them, and ultimately what they're not asking.
Definitely. Well, I think it's wise that you have that industry specific framing, but then also can relate it to a product that is going to evolve and develop alongside those key stakeholders
Yeah.
as customers. How, as a CEO, how do you balance that product led growth relative to more of a sales and marketing led initiative? And how does that all tie in?
Steve, sorry, I missed you there. Could you ask me that question again?
Sure. Yeah. How, in terms of just balancing the product roadmap and where you're going as a company, and the framing as to the feedback you're getting from current and existing clients, how do you balance then the natural organic product led growth relative to kind of scaling out into new markets with via sales and marketing?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So I think that the first point is ensuring that as a leadership team, so myself, my CTO, my operations, and my innovation officer as well, we're all aligned in terms of what that end goal is, right? So we know ultimately what our 3-year, 5-year plan is going to be and where we want to get to within that time frame. So the first thing is having that very clear goal that everybody is aligned and agreed to. And so having that means, because as I touched on earlier, and I think alluded to in the previous question, there's a lot that you learn throughout the initial months of a young startup, right? And you cannot expect that there won't be pivots and you won't have to evolve. And there won't be moments where you fail, and there will be lots of moments where you learn. So it's important, as I said, that having that long-term vision and that goal means that those pivots and those evolutions that need to be made are always within the context of achieving that goal. If you didn't have that goal, it would make it a lot harder to justify certain pivots and changes, and there might be a lot more disagreements along the way because we didn't have that clarity. But I think it's finding that balance between understanding which of the pivots that we need to make within achieving those specific KPIs along the milestones that we've set out as part of that journey, both on the product roadmap, but also on the kind of business development roadmap that ensures those two were, or should always be and are always aligned, right? So that if we have a customer that comes in, for example, that needs, that has an urgent need for a specific piece of, software or hardware or whatever it might be that might be further along in our roadmap, then we work with those customers to maybe bring that forward and adjust our roadmap depending on, what scale we're at, what capacity we're at and how we can deliver. Ultimately, our main focus is ensuring that our customers are happy and that we deliver the precise, robust solutions that we are currently doing. So when you talk about balance, as I said, it's having that goal in mind, but ensuring along the way that you can pivot based on what the customer needs are.
That's great insight, and I think it makes a lot of sense to have that alignment, especially amongst the core leaders of Intelligence Core. I guess then, as it relates to kind of the offering and touching on a little bit on the hardware here, how do you guys balance or at least just present that to initial groups? You mentioned earlier that you lead more so with software, but then how does the hardware come into the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the hardware is a kind of strategic amplifier of the software, right? If that makes sense. So it's
Mhm.
kind of as part of our software deployment, and I touched on the challenges around data that a lot of these operators and companies have in its kind of fragmented landscape. And that's where the hardware comes in. So it can either be used to plug in gaps, right? So I'll give you an example. Some of our customers, and one of our customers has hundreds of miles of pipeline. In certain sections of those pipeline, they will have a good amount of sensors and IoT sensors that are deployed across there that gives the right level of data that we require in order to give those insights back. In other parts of that pipeline, they might not have any sensors at all. And so we can then deploy our drones and deploy our hardware to plug those gaps. So that's just then it serves as a kind of data enrichment to amplify the impact that the software and our engines can deliver to the business. Okay. So that's one aspect. The other one is a kind of amplification of that, which is, a lot of these times, a lot of the times, or sometimes the customers are, or the sharing of data is somewhat prohibited within the business, right? But they still want to deploy AI and they still want to take advantage of it. But how do you do that without sharing data? Well, you can't is the answer. But that's where our hardware comes in, because we can now turn around and say to our customers, don't worry, you don't need to share your live data with us. We can go off and collect that data for you and do it all and just provide the insights and plug it directly into your tech stack. We've built it, as I said, in a very modular way. So we can integrate with SCADA, we can integrate with IoT, with PLC data. We can deploy at the edge, or we can deploy it in the field or at the cloud. We kind of use the hardware, as I said, as a strategic amplifier of the software, rather than positioning it as the whole business. So we pair that software stack with a hydrogen powered drones, right? Which is again a kind of class apart from a lot of what you're seeing on the market, which is battery powered. And with battery powered means they go less, they require additional infrastructure like charging pads. We don't have that issue. We have a hydrogen that can fly for hundreds of miles in one flight and capture all of this data. So we pair that software stack with the drones. And then we have additional sensors that can do above ground, but we're also one of the few companies in the world that have subsurface intelligence, right? So we have sensors that can detect below ground infrastructure as well. Now, these systems then provide that kind of additional data, effectively intelligence that can feed any one of those software engines that are deployed. And that then closes the loop between detection, prediction, orchestration, and ultimately automation.
Well, I mean, talk about a fascinating data enrichment strategy. And I imagine then with that insight, it makes your relationships with those customers just that much better in terms of a long-term commitment. What have they said in terms of like relative to pre-intelligent core to post-implementation? Like what's the initial feedback been like among existing users?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really positive. We're already delivering, real results to a lot of our customers. For some of our customers, we're seeing up to kind of 40% in kind of operational gains, up to 70% in cost savings, 30% energy consumption savings. So we're seeing real tangible results. And I think, as I touched on, the hardware, the strategy is really to be hardware integrated, not hardware dependent. Right? So the platform also ingests third-party drones, IoT sensors, SCADA, embedded devices through this kind of unified integration there that I touched on. So being able to do all of that means we can deliver real value really quickly. So we're seeing ROI for a lot of our customers come within the 90-day marker, which is, for AI, that's pretty quick.
Yes.
And that's purely from the point of the fact that, we recognize for a lot of operators and companies, particularly in the perm, that AI is still a bit of a black box, right? What does it really mean, right? And there'll be lots of people in the businesses who really get it, but there'll also be a few, who don't really get it. And that's not a slight in any way. It's a new technology. It hasn't been deployed at scale. So there's not a lot of market data that gives them that insight. So being able to go into them and say, we'll start running a pilot on a very fixed, specific area, whether that be geographical or kind of infrastructure based. We then prove that, we deliver the ROI just on that fixed use case within 90 days. And then it's really working with the customers and understanding what that scale journey looks like and that scaling kind of roadmap looks like. We haven't had one project yet where we haven't delivered significant gains for our customers. And so that's been really positive feedback. And now it's just the challenge is then, how do we then scale that across the business, following the same principles that we had with the pilot, which is deliver ROI quickly, minimize downtime or risk associated with scaling, and deliver impact to the business.
I mean, all good challenges though to have. So hats off to you
Absolutely.
guys for hitting that milestone.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little, obviously you guys have a really dynamic platform within oil and gas, but how are you guys as kind of a small early start company able to form a team that's been able to deliver these results so quickly?
Well, I mean, that kind of goes back to the inception of Intelligent Core a little bit. I'm not necessarily a big believer in fate, Stephen, but so prior to joining Intelligent Core, I was the Global Director of Consumer Experience and AI at British American Tobacco. So I was deploying AI at a generative level there for the last couple of years. But just before I left, I started to get involved in kind of operational deployment of AI and the challenges around that. And BAT is a huge corporate business with, tens of thousands of employees globally and a very complex supply chain and operational network. So just from my kind of background, I already had a sense of what these kind of challenges, the big questions that were being asked at least at a corporate level around the deployment of AI. When I left BAT, I actually went back to Oxford University and did a kind of executive diploma there in AI strategy for business. And whilst I was doing that, I was reconnected with Adam and with Robert, who had been developing this concept in the background. And Adam, obviously through his work with PureStream, Pioneer and Swire, really understood that there's a huge opportunity for AI to make a real difference to these guys and these businesses. And so, we kind of came together, and I think it's just having that kind of perfect mix of deep domain knowledge, technical expertise, and then kind of business strategy that has enabled us to, I guess, really, as I said, sharpen our focus, sharpen our narrative, sharpen our message, and have a really focused product roadmap that builds products based on the customer need, not just building cool technology for technology's sake. So it's been a really, and don't get me wrong, right? There've been absolutely challenges and disagreements that we've all had along the way, but because we've all aligned on that end goal and that kind of mission and vision, rather, of what we want Intelligent Core to be, we've been able to navigate those challenges and those hurdles together in a way that puts us in a strong position to capture the pipeline and deliver these kind of projects and solutions to our customers, not just in a way that works for them, but in a time frame that means something that will deliver impact to them as well.
That makes a ton of sense, but it's honestly pretty rare to see a team like yourselves come together and execute in the manner that you've done. So that's great detail, and just appreciate the insight there. As you guys look forward to 2026 and beyond, what are the opportunities and maybe some of the hurdles that you see coming up?
Well, I think the opportunities are, at a broad level, scaling beyond leak detection or produced water management or rig and well optimization, which is where majority of our work and our solutions are being deployed at the moment. So there's big opportunity to scale beyond those, and upstream, midstream, downstream. There's a whole raft of different operational challenges that both run across all of those, but are also siloed to them specifically, that that we at Intelligent Core are kind of perfectly placed to address. So that's really exciting, that we are as a team really excited about moving into and developing our engines on our products to help solve some challenges beyond, as I said, leak detection or produced water management. But then beyond oil and gas, it's looking at what are the kind of parallel characteristics that are shared between oil and gas and other big sectors. So whether it be logistics, manufacturing, automotive, aviation fleets, global healthcare, hospitality, these are all sectors that share similar characteristics with oil and gas, like a complex supply chain, high infrastructure costs, high energy costs. So complex operational networks as well. So there's excitement as well about taking what we've learned and built for oil and gas and then deploying that and applying it in other sectors. So that's something really exciting. I think in terms of the challenges, there's going to be challenges in fun challenges, right? Which is how do we then reframe our solutions to suit and identify specific challenges within those sectors? And that's a really good problem to have, an exciting one to work through. And then there's always going to be challenges as we scale within specific oil and gas customers, and understanding as we scale, there's going to be increasing change management and adoption challenges that we'll need to support our customers in working through. And that's why we've recently agreed a strategic partnership with a company called Human in the Loop, which was founded by Rob Jordan and Kari Jordan, both of whom spent 20 years working in the digital excellence team at Shell. So they know innately what these challenges around kind of not just AI, but kind of technology adoption and scaling within these big businesses looks like. So we kind of second their team and we're kind of building an adoption team with them to support these customers so that as we scale within their business from a kind of software and technology perspective, we can provide them the support both at a strategic and operational level to help them build out a roadmap for how that then impacts internally around change management, workflows, governance. And I think we're not about replacing humans. And I know there's a kind of big question, or, the top fear around AI, which is it's going to replace my job. I'm going to be made superfluous. Two things here. We prefer to look at it as augmentation, right? We're not here to replace humans. We're here to augment how they operate and improve performance and support them in their roles. So understanding those challenges, I think, will be important for us to successfully scale our solutions beyond the pilot phase and into other parts of it. So that will be a big challenge that we'll need to hurdle as well.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you guys already have a really compelling moat within oil and gas, but within just your capabilities of supply chains, we can definitely agree that there's a huge opportunity within hospitality and other adjacent industries. That I think that's a very compelling roadmap, but makes for a really exciting and probably a pretty demanding 2026 for your team.
Yeah, you could say that it's going to be it's going to be a really exciting year. We're going to have internal challenges as well, right? We're going to have challenges around how do we scale the team? What's the right way and right area to invest in first? What should we not be investing in? How do we make sure that we have the team to deliver, bearing in mind that our number one goal is customer success? So we're going to have some kind of growth challenges that come along with that. So, in terms of CapEx investment, in terms of hiring, as I said, in terms of entity setups, global expansions, there'll be some challenges around, what we prioritize and what we do first. And you're right, it is going to be big challenges and a big year for Intelligent Core next year, but one that we're all, galvanized and ready and excited to tackle.
Well, I appreciate you giving us the great overview of Intelligent Core and your team and just the journey you guys have had to date. It sounds highly successful and presents a great and compelling solution for 2026 across oil and gas. So thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. It's been, we're really excited. And I think we feel like we're in a strong position and we've got, a world-class team behind me, some world-class products, and we're already seeing the impact of those products within our customers now. So we're excited for scaling those and for what we can do for more customers come next year.
Excellent. Thank you for your time today, Tom.
Thanks for your time, Stephen. Really enjoyed the conversation.